everybody, and welcome to this video looking at Azur Lane. It's Compile Heart's latest one. It's an action game that's based on a mobile title, but I wanted to start just by apologising. I know it's been a couple of days since I last did a video, but I haven't been entirely 100%, so yeah, I figured it was probably not a good idea for you to hear my raspy voice. I'm back now though, obviously, and yeah, this is a game that's been keeping me busy. I've already done a review of it for digitallydownloaded.net. Basically, I really enjoyed it, even though it's not really my kind of genre usually, or at least half of it isn't, and we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, it's fun, it's good, it's Idea Factory's second game in the year already. They've been very prolific already early in 2020, and if you weren't a huge fan of Ark of Alchemist, which was, well, I enjoyed it, but a lot of other people obviously didn't, looking at the way that it's been received on the internets. If you didn't like that one, then this might give you a bit more of a fix of the stuff that you like about Idea Factory and Compile Heart. So this one's very fan-servicey for a start, which is a return to what Compile Heart really does kind of do best, and Idea Factory as a company really does best. We are talking about the publisher and studio behind the Hyperdimension Neptunia series after all, and a little bit like Hyperdimension Neptunia, Azur Lane doesn't take itself too seriously. Its fanservice doesn't try to be sexy or titillating or anything like that. It's more about having fun with how fundamentally ridiculous it all is, and it really does pull that tone off really nicely. The character designs are all right over the top, plenty of over the top panty flashes and all that kind of stuff to go with it, and yeah, nothing about this is really trying to be sexy. So there are other developers that do try to turn the fan service into something a little bit sexy. I'd argue that the Dead or Alive series, for example, really does try to turn it on to go with the sense of humour that it also has. This one is just pure humour from start to finish, and there are an awful lot of anime girls in it, so it really gets away with that kind of that tone, that exactly the same energy that really drove Hyperdimension Neptunia drives this one as well. Now, you're probably wondering why all these characters are floating around on the ocean and shooting at enemy battleships and planes and stuff. If you haven't been following along with Azur Lane, and fair enough, it hasn't had a huge presence in the West to date, this is probably the biggest, highest profile thing in the franchise that has had a Western release so far. It basically takes all the World War II battleships and replaces them with cute anime girls. They still behave like battleships of various different classes, so for example an aircraft carrier can summon airplanes into the sky. The more robust battleships have defensive ability, for example, and then there's the light and fast kind of cruiser type ships as well. So they all behave like battleships really, but they are just a one-for-one replacement with anime girls, which is far more appealing on the eyes, it must be said, and makes the whole concept of war a lot more fun. And basically they go about shooting at one another. As you can see, I'm attacking one of the enemy girl battleships now, in amongst a swarm of more conventional styled enemies. And you do that level after level after level, really. It's basically the entire gameplay loop. In between those scenes, or in between these battles, there are quite extended narrative sequences in which the characters just basically talk to each other and set up the next round of battles. Those are kind of a highlight in some ways, though, because it gives the developer a chance to showcase the character art, and it really is gorgeous. This is Compile Heart's greatest strength. Here we go, here's an example of it. Compile Heart really does understand fan-servicey character art, and they really go to a great level of depth with the design and the detail and all of that kind of stuff, which makes these kind of static conversation bits more interesting because it is really just blank pictures and voiceovers. So you know, it's a very niche way of doing things these days. Even the kind of low tier JRPGs tend to have more fully animated sequences these days, but you know, the character art is what kind of lets this game get away with it really, and it's still appealing. The narrative is absolutely nonsense, but it's good fun, and it's enjoyable to see kind of which characters will match up or square off against one another next, and how the general plot will unfold. So yeah, you do spend a lot of time following along with the narrative here. I'd say the ratio is kind of way out between these kind of dialogue narrative sequences and the action bits, the action bits are only over. They're over very quickly. They're a minute or two each, and these things go for a long time. So yeah, the ratio's out. You have to kind of enjoy the narrative to really get your money's worth with Azur Lane. But I would say that if you are a fan of what Compile Heart's done in the past, this will click with you, because it is very much, like I said earlier, very much in the same kind of vibe as previous games from the developer. The other thing to note is it's not a particularly difficult game, so it's not designed to be challenging like the typical shmup. Basically, the concept of this game was the developer wanted to take the 2D mobile game and just do a 3D version of it. So in terms of the action, it does very much feel like a shmup once you get into combat. But it's not designed to be difficult by any means, because I'd know that because I'm absolutely terrible at the shmup genre, and I was still able to make my way through this game. There are some tougher missions later on, and then there's, you know, the obvious optional stuff where they really kind of ramp difficulty up further if you're that hooked into it. But none of that is really necessary to enjoy the game through to the narrative completion. And if you just focus on that side of things, then it's pretty accessible to just about anybody, I would imagine. It's certainly not an RPG, and people who have traditionally come to Compile Heart for the RPGs might find this to be a little bit off-putting at first, not necessarily because it doesn't immediately feel good to play, because it does, but more because it looks and feels like what you'd expect a Compile Heart game to be, but doesn't play anything like it. So there is that little bit of a disconnect initially, but once you move past that, you realise that it's not really an RPG at all. It is an action game. You can enjoy it for what it is. That's my favourite character. As an aside, she's got a great skirt and midriff, she does. And as you can see, once again, the variety in the characters is really nice as well. Everybody will have their own favourite one, of course, and you'll get a chance to meet them all and interact with them all. And later on down the track, you can actually marry them, so it does go into the full waifu territory. As you probably expect going into it. And yeah, it's very light-hearted. Again, it doesn't try to be too titillating about any of it, but it is very fan-servicey, and it wears that on its sleeve. So it is, again, a return to Compile Heart, I guess, at its most traditional. I actually think it's going to be an interesting year for Compile Heart and Idea Factory over the next year. We're getting towards the PlayStation 5 and the next generation, so like pretty much every other developer or publisher, I would imagine that Idea Factory is getting prepared for that and looking at what it can do with the next generation of consoles. And we've actually seen over the last year or so Idea Factory really start to push in different directions, not lose its heritage entirely, but try and tackle more serious topics and gameplay ideas, I guess. So I'm talking about things like Death and Request and Dragon Star Varnia. Earlier on there was Fairy Fencer F and Dark Rose Valkyrie. Not all of these ideas, you know, really shine through, and you can look at Arc of Alchemist as proof that not all of them do resonate, even with some of the more hardcore Idea Factory fans. But by the same token, the experimentation is there, and the desire to find new ways of presenting things. None of these games have lost their sense of fan service, of course, and they certainly have plenty of anime-style elements in there, but they do tackle more challenging topics, and they try and do it in a more nuanced way. So in some ways, coming back to this game, which kind of gets rid of all of that to go back to what Compile Heart was really doing mostly through the PlayStation 3 and Vita era, it's been nice. It's been a lot of fun, really. And yeah, I don't know what else really to say about this game. It's been a joy to play. It's not really my area of specialty. I found it harder than I probably should have because I'm really bad at shmups. But yeah, I've had a really good time with this one. Anyway, that's enough of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do like and subscribe to me on Patreon, on this channel if you enjoy my videos. See, I'm still probably perhaps not completely over the cold, so I'm not thinking very clearly. And if you do enjoy my videos, please back me on Patreon, because that will help me do a lot more of them. Otherwise, we will see you at the next video.